tonight we have 12 different comments, so our speakers will be able to speak for 2 minutes. So we will go ahead and start with Caitlin Scanlon. Caitlin, you may have to move that microphone down just a little bit.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Scanlon, and I go to Patterson Elementary. So on September 20th, I got called up to the office saying I was being sent home, but no. When I got to the office, the front desk told me to go to the nurse's office. When I went in, I was asked my name, and the nurse gave me a mask, and I was told to sit down. And I saw other kids from my band class. My parents weren't called for 3 hours. I sat in the nurse's office for 3 hours, worried and scared where my mom was, because she said she will come pick me up every day at 3 o'clock. My mom came in mad that this happened to me and went to my principal's office right away. I was scared because I thought I was in trouble. I was able to return the next day because I already had COVID. The quarantine affects every kid's grade, missing assignments, and mental health. Mind you, this was the last week of the first quarter. Please stop sending healthy kids home. Thank you.
Thank you. I will remind everyone to please not clap and react. I know that she was just an adorable young lady, and but in future ones, so. So. Christine Scanlon.
That's me.
Mom.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Christine Scanlon. I have, in addition to Caitlin, another child who attends Basha High School. I thought I'd be here tonight to discuss something other than COVID and quarantine, but as you heard, that's not the case. Yes, my daughter was removed from class for possible exposure. These days, that's routine. She was masked with approximately 12 other students in the nurse's office when masks are supposed to be optional. She waited for almost 3 hours as I did not receive any phone calls from the school. 3 hours for a 10-year-old, in my opinion, is abusive, especially when you're not told why you are there. I found out only because her attendance on Infinite Campus was updated for the following day, which was Tuesday, as quarantined. So of course, this was 2:50 p.m. and dismissal begins at 3:05. I thought for sure this was a mistake, but of course it wasn't. I thought an additional fact that you need to know is my daughter did test positive earlier, and she was in that 90-day window, but apparently that issue was ignored. My daughter missed an entire afternoon of school for something that could have been resolved in 5 minutes. This is absolutely unacceptable. The principal told me, I'm sorry, and that the health assistant had a few emergencies that afternoon, but that's not good enough. Why was she the only one who making phone calls? Where was the rest of the staff? So I'd like to know from all of you here, who is going to take responsibility for this? Anybody? Anybody willing to take responsibility? How is it that these procedures are not routine after almost 2 years? How long could it possibly take to call a family and say, your child needs to be picked up because of COVID exposure? We can discuss any questions when you arrive. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be accepting any more excuses about quarantine, whether it's from Maricopa County
30
or
seconds.
When the school says, oh, we're just following the rules. How many more years do the kids need to play catch up? We all saw the AZ merit scores. When will the students not have to worry about losing to seat roulette? When will the realization set in that COVID is here to stay? You could quarantine the entire district and COVID will still be here. Wait a minute. We've already done that, and that wasn't the solution. Honestly, I, for one, cannot wait until September 29th. Thank you.
Thank you. Kurt Roars.
My name is Kurt Roars, and I'm a parent in this district. Last meeting, we brought to the board's attention the serious deficiencies in reading and math scores at several elementary schools in the district. This is of utmost importance because without a solid foundation in these skills established early in a child's education, it will not have an equitable chance of succeeding in future learning in the district. The district has 6 elementary schools where 70% or more of the students failed the English test, and 7 schools where 80% or more failed the math test. Almost all of these schools had a majority of Hispanic students. I've begun reaching out to the Hispanic community to understand how we could best address this dire situation. Early response from the community indicate that after-school tutoring and remedial work is essential in helping struggling kids catch up to the grade level expectations. Assigning homework is of dubious effectiveness since parents and caregivers often have their own difficulties with English and cannot realistically help their kids with the assignments. There was also rather harsh criticism that teachers consistently ignore English and math deficiencies and pass kids through the next grade level without sufficiently mastering skills. And it's simply because somebody else's problem the following school year. This is academic fraud. The situation compounds itself year after year until the student reaches high school and is so hopelessly behind that they have little chance of being successful. Many drop out. The district has received substantial funds through the federal ESSER programs and other grants. The funds must be concentrated on remedial
30
teaching
seconds.
and tutoring programs. There can be no other higher priority. Funds from dubiously effective social and emotional learning programs must be redirected to the direct teaching of students to achieve acceptable levels of educational skills. SEL does little to teach kids to read or do math better, simply makes them more comfortable with failure. The district must bring all schools up to at least 50% passing scores in English and mathematics by the end of the year. This would be the hallmark of a truly highly
Time
performing.
has expired. Thank you. Nicole Eidson?
Okay, let me move this out of my face here. Okay. Yes, hi. My name's Nicole Eidson, and I'm here tonight to talk about the mandatory training that was required by the administration, school counselors, and the psychologists for the school. That was from the Director of Equity and Inclusion. The mandatory training was initially touted as an impact of radicalized trauma on Black students. Just before the training, the day of the training, it was changed from radicalized trauma to racialized trauma. The trainer, who blatantly had some sort of issues, said that the policing policies came from the KKK. That was a direct quote from her as the trainer to this administration, school counselors, and psychologists. She also shared her inability to sleep after 3 weeks of the George Floyd incident, which has absolutely no place in the schools in any sort of training at all. There was absolutely no reason for her to share that information in a training. And the training also was supposed to not be geared towards the Black African American students, but the very first slide that they showed was about macroaggression. And this
30 seconds.
on the macroaggression slide, it had large-scale overt aggression toward people of color, threats of assault or death using racial ethnic epithet, police harassment, body searches, and the killing of Black men, women, and children, color blindness, schools to prison pipeline, and confinement pipeline. Now, I have the slide right here. I'm not making...
Time has expired. Thank you. Phil Campbell?
I have more strong words tonight. They're the product of years of studying the literature of the left with the goal of education with a purpose. Two antithetical worldviews are in mortal combat, and the right side must remain alert and animated. The world is being changed by force. Change is an article of faith in man-centered religions and an ongoing process believed necessary for man's very survival and sanctification. 2 weeks ago, parent comments at Heart summed up how authoritarianism is affecting their families. I spoke about the religious source and nature of why. Failure to grasp the ardent religious nature of the radical left has doomed the right to regular defeat. Only fleeting victories are possible without learning the relentless religious zeal impelling the left toward its goals. The left wants utter destruction of Western civilization because they blame it for injustice, disunity, and poverty, rather than blame the heart of man. Many deny good and evil, yet the West is counted a moral failure, so the left feels morally obligated to destroy that evil in order to build back better. This obligation drives the left to maniacal urgency to save man from man by human power aided by science and technology. Their belief a pall of doom is cast by Western civilization upon our very survival fuels that urgency. The radical left's base of atheist rejection of divine authority forces their
30
acceptance
seconds.
of responsibility for the fate of man.
Thank you. Ann Adams.
Hi, my name is Ann Adams. I have 2 kids. One is being homeschooled right now, and the other one's still at Hamilton. I would like to compliment you for starting to pay attention to us parents and filtering out some of the negative materials and keeping an eye on what's going on in our school, because I do see some people really paying attention to that. So thank you for trying, and hopefully we'll see more of that. I still want to keep a vigilant eye as a parent in the district on third-party programs like the Everyone Matters, where it was 145,000 and they have, political slogans on their website. I pointed that out last week. Also, the diversity director, I want to know why she's paying speaker fees to her buddies over at ASU and that are sparsely attended speaking events. I mean, I feel like this wasteful spending is not being a good steward of our money, of our taxpayer money. And I'm going to do a FOIA with some other parents to see where money's going, because that really bothers me, especially when we hear Kurt talking about how much tutoring would help. My kid probably wouldn't be homeschooled if you had some good programs in place to help her get caught up without all the anxiety. So spend our money in the right places, spend it on our children, not on these third-party vendors which are paying off their buddies to speak at ASU and nobody's even going to watch them speak. I also have a problem right now with the questionnaires to our kids. We need to trust you. We need to trust you with our heart because you have our babies. And you're doing questionnaires at ACP on suicide. First of all, you question a young child on suicide. You could create a suicidal
30
event.
seconds.
So stop doing that without parental consent and keep an eye on these questionnaires. We don't trust you when you don't give parental consent and we have a clear understanding of why you're questioning our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandy Reese, please. Brandy?
Good evening. So I've noticed a trend within the last recent times. A fascination and topic of discussion has centered around not placing value judgments and assessments on things like skin color and racial identity. I would like the school board to apply that same lens to the topic of sex education. If you review the CUSD policy on drug, alcohol, and tobacco use, the objectives are to create an awareness, to inform the student of the effect on the body of narcotics, sedatives, and hallucinogens, to relate the use of drugs and alcohol, to encourage the individual to adopt an appropriate attitude, to understand the need for seeking professional advice, and to understand personal, social, economic problems caused by the misuse of drugs and alcohol. However, if you look to policy that deals with sex education, it's not even called sex education. It's called family life. And that really places a value judgment on sex. It implies that the only appropriate sex is family, within the family structure. And that is a value assessment, in my opinion. I believe that we should be teaching our kids about their bodies, about the sex and reproductive organs, and how they work, much the same way we do with any other body system, such as the digestive
30
system
seconds.
or the respiratory system, and not place a value assessment on what they choose to do with that information. That information and that type of value assessment is best left to the parents or the church or wherever. And we should be teaching them not about heterosexual sex is the only appropriate and safe, but also other forms of sex that are out there
Time has expired. Thank you. Courtney Erickson.
Hello? Okay. Good evening. I am here tonight to be the voice for all of the elementary children being robbed of yet another year's activities. We spent last year wiping away tears, explaining things to them that their little minds couldn't possibly comprehend, and hoping that things would be different this year. The past week, I had to explain to my first grader why we couldn't do art masterpiece because of quarantine protocols. I heard this wonderful young man speak about all the activities that they're doing at the high school, yet art masterpiece is being postponed. Where is the logic? Look at these pictures of the Hamilton game. Wow, a nationally televised game, packed with students, parents, teachers, faculty. But one mom going in to teach art is going to be the demise of the entire school. This is ridiculous. And since I get 2 minutes to speak, we'll go into my daughter being quarantined. That was great. And just so everybody knows, the poor little girl that had to sit in the office, I text my daughter after I was called to say, come pick up your daughter, she's being quarantined. Oh, okay, so I text my daughter, I'm so sorry this is happening again. She texts me back, what are you talking about? She was still in class, still walking around. So when I went in to pick her up, I spoke to the principal and she says, we have nowhere to keep them, is what she told me. So if it's so pertinent to pick up our kids that are being quarantined,
30
they're just
seconds.
letting them go around school like it's nothing, yet they need to get the F out, basically. We need to get our priorities straight. Be fair to the little kids and stop quarantining our healthy children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beth Wamsley.
This is going to sound very familiar after that. It's time to stop quarantining our healthy children. Despite your explanation that this is a county requirement, Mesa, Higley, Queen Creek, Dysart, and Fountain Hills, among others, continue to allow voluntary quarantine for students who are not COVID positive. You are making a choice to subject Chandler students to these measures. In the history of global tyranny, the excuse of, I was just following orders, has never borne out well. I speak to parents in other districts, and they are incredulous at the ineptitude of our school board. What I explain to them is that we have one, maybe two, of you who are politically motivated and have no regard for the best interests of our students, and the rest of you are just spineless. Well, there are a dozen of us here who represent hundreds within the district who are willing to be your backbone. Stand up for our students, and we will support you. If the county threatens to shut our schools down, there is an army of parents who will rise up. I don't know how they would justify closing our schools when so many other districts have moved forward with their own procedures. I'd like you to call their bluff. It frankly makes me doubt the veracity of any of your claims altogether. And since we have extra time, also allow the volunteers back in the schools. Our teachers are shouldering so many pressures right now, particularly as they have to make allowances for all the healthy students that you are barring from campus. Parent volunteers have always been an important infrastructure within the schools. We run reading groups, implement art masterpiece, do grunt work for teachers, and provide so many needed services that benefit both teachers and students. When evaluating policies, there should only be one question on your mind. Will this benefit the students in our district?
30 seconds.
Right now, if something will benefit the students, you remove it. And if it will harm the students, you implement it. It's asinine.
Ruth Jones.
I sent a video to the district that I hope you've had an opportunity to watch. Last week, my daughter watched a video in class. The video was pornographic. I spoke with Jessica Edgar. She assured me the video was not approved and will not be shown again. But this is about more than that. We've been so caught up in masking, vaccinations, and CRT that we stopped educating our children. We indoctrinate them, we sexualize them, but we no longer teach them. The video shown was from the Canterbury Tales, which is a poor choice for high school students. It should be introduced in a collegiate setting. We need to get back to the basics. We need to do what high school was meant to do. Teach them how to learn, get them excited to be able to learn. make science an experiment, and English a love for the classics. High school is about helping our children find their passion, not telling them what to believe. Start teaching our children to think. The fact that a teacher didn't think showing a cartoon that depicted a rape was a problem tells me you have a problem. I urge you to get back on track. Put our children first. Serve them instead of a political agenda, which seems to be the focus, not our children. I urge you to make our curriculum transparent. I would like to see cameras in every classroom. How many parents didn't get told that their student watched that video? I'd like it to be available so all parents know. I was lucky that my daughter came home horrified to tell me what she had seen. For the record, the video shows a virgin being raped, and my daughter is a virgin and was devastated. I urge you to make changes that put our children first. Start thinking about what they need and not what sounds good politically.
Time has expired. Thank you. Jennifer Albee.
I'm actually going to go off script tonight, which is unfortunate. I had 3 points that I wanted to bring up tonight. The first was actually a compliment to our CUSD board and our administrators who manage in a very tough time. And in spite of the fact that I don't always agree with every decision made, I have to acknowledge that it's difficult and that you give a lot of your own time and of your family's time. My second point tonight was to offer my perspective as the parent who has been able to watch over the last 18 months the difference between how CUSD has approached COVID mitigation measures with my current junior age child versus how my children's charter school, for my 2 youngest, has approached COVID mitigation measures. And I will simply send this in an email form to the board and to administration instead of detailing it. But please let me assure you that it has been very notable what has been superior and what has worked and what has not. And there is a reason that my 2 youngest children are at charter school, and we have no plans to bring them back to CUSD, which breaks my heart. Thirdly, I am going to make a formal information request regarding CUSD's lobbyists. But all that can wait, because on the heels of what Ruth just shared, I would like to also share for the
30
record
seconds.
that my son, 3 years ago, in his sophomore year English class at Perry High School, was also shown a video in his English class that I considered to be pornographic. It was a stylized, danced portrayal of a rape and abuse used to illustrate feminist theory. And when I took it up with the principal, 3 days later, the feedback I got back was simply, well, this teacher didn't understand CUSD tech policy. So I have
Time
updated
has
her.
expired. Thank you. Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie Murphy. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm disgusted. Every time I come here, I hope that we're going to be getting some good news. And this evening is truly disturbing and breaks my heart for these children that are here in the CUSD schools. I'm here this evening to talk about the protocols that you guys are, enacting. I've sent emails to you along with other families have. We've, phone called, and the only person who's called or, contacted us back is Mr. Narducci. So thank you for that. Of course, the reply is a complacent, well, we're following Maricopa County Health Department, guidelines. You know what? Well, that's garbage. It might be the way that you're doing it, but the guidelines are there as a framework. And you guys take everything pedal to the metal, 90 degrees, 100% left. And it's ridiculous. Like other parents here have stated, Mesa Public Schools, the largest school district here in Arizona, is also following the Maricopa County health guidelines, and they're not doing it the way that you're doing it. So is Higley, so is Queen Creek, and we're actually starting to see educational gains in our children, and our children are happy. It's hard to have to send our kids to, your schools, when, especially for me, it was a choice of a school, and then I have to sit around and tolerate this. Thank goodness my daughter is a senior, and she's doing okay, and I'm happy that she'll be off and away.
30 seconds.
We've reached out also to the governor, and the governor office wrote us back and said that the practice of instituting mandatory quarantine for vaccinated versus unvaccinated for COVID-19 exposure is illegal and contrary to House Bill 2898. So we're going to get the governor to start to do something about CUSD. We write most of the board on a regular basis. Two people in particular we don't, because we're tired of being bullied and harassed and made fun of.
Time has expired. Thank you. I appreciate everyone coming out and speaking to us and bringing some things to our attention. And with that, we will move on to our consent agenda. Mr. Narducci.